Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome transgressive and what do I say? Outsider and transgressive and outsider authors. I've done this some fucking dozens of times, and I don't even fucking remember. 2 years we've been doing this, and I don't know what I say. Anyway, each Friday, we welcome outsider and transgressive writers to come and share their work with us. And yeah, it is over 2 fucking years now. It was 2 years as of July 25th, I think. Anyway, so let's get started here. First up tonight is the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla. Also, also Rudy. It's fucking Rudy.
Yum. Yep. Okay, you got the link in
Yeah,
there.
I got it.
Cool.
So
So
you're
this
gonna
is
read a topical piece that you didn't write as a topical piece, but now somebody's tried to
basically,
kill Rushdie, and now it's a topical piece.
yeah. I actually inserted a Salman Rushdie thing into here to make it even more sort of topical, maybe. Yeah. So this is a piece that I made the image first and then wrote the poem. I think that makes it an aphrixis or whatever. I don't know because we
Where's
need
Blick? Where's
that's what I'm
Blick
gonna
when
say.
you need him?
We need Blick to issue a proclamation about that because I don't know really much about aphrixis. Ecraxis. I don't know. Anyway, I'll just start reading it. Does my mic sound okay?
Sounds perfect.
Great. So this piece is called Source of Emulation. I apologize. I'm coughing all over the place. Source of Emulation. Coin operated Kamini proclaims 2-player beat 'em up where the Shah gets his face kicked in at the end. Mechanic where you move between hypervisibility and invisibility like a djinn. Isn't that from Miss Marvel? Says the genie hanging out in this glowy alcove performatively in Robin Williams' voice, hanging on the word Marvel, like the man once golden shackled in Louis's body, marveled in the prospect of escape while hanging by the neck, hanging by a moment because dementia is a dead end, zero difference game, and life is rigged and also unrigged. A pretty unanimated model standing here until you make it move. Why are you watching Miss Marvel, faggot? Queries coin operated Kamini, stroking his beard like the genie has stroked his dick, thinking about being the mosque shoe thief from that convenient subplot. Just as goody multitudes stroke the genie's lamp, promise freedom after service, then abscond, abduct Agrabahian princesses and flourish in marital or martial harmony, beat the girl all night, beat bat Christian knights encroaching from westerly directions, and a fat Jew is doing the thing, the hand rubbing motion, or is that Birdman, the rapper, in his prestige skin? Coin operated Kamini is a marjal taqlid, a font of Islamic jurisprudence, a source of emulation. He is also a video game arcade cabinet that plays Blaze Blue 99, a charade of one finger submission positions where none of God's names are said except in anger. The supreme leader's daytime is a blur of Salman Rushdown taunting not Muhammad, each answered provocation and expensive calculus. But beyond dusk, his bearded face is dancing like a boy in, say, Afghanistan, behind the glass for your currency. Ooh. For 1/4 century, the Islamic Republic has gone without warheads, but stays pretty well hung conventionally. XOXO, Colonel Ali, low crawling enemy man scramble, struggle, or eventually learn to stop worrying and love the screen clear. Secret arms, wild arms, Nicaragua. Coin operated Kamini is probably gas because Arcady Malaise has stymied enrichment here, along with Stuxnet, ever since it wrote a plastic memory key to paradise showing some baby face cybersecurity officer martyred in a drone strike. Maybe the virus just figured out how to jump Mario 1-1 and leapt up from allegedly Israeli and American computers. up past the Angels, dodging anti-aircraft fire on their descent to pull people out of graves, up, up until it collected enough stars to warp reality, entering Allah's domain. A New Game Plus has multiple levels, and parts of Jannah contain varying degrees of swelter, despite the mere 6 degrees that separate all men. Heaven is other people, which, well, oversexed, proc-genned women with anomalous eyes grind on guys who push Rahula's buttons all day in this life after death, while Diddy echoes rhetoricals from the violet haze of overstimulation. Y'all just don't stop, he thought was. And here, everything he says is fat with wah. He is an elderly man in a digital cupboard. What else can be expected? Back on Earth, men and women explode in fury and in more kinetic words such as shock waves or ejaculations. Has it really come to this? Is a question a lot of dumb Brookings Institute scholars ask, whether cooming Lottie or coming Lottie. Shit. To an actress washing her toes in the fake Moss toe washer, just going absolutely nuclear with the lotion, while adult souls or pubescent balls in the more appropriate instances descend. We cannot allow a problematic age gap. Everything is Gucci this, proxy that. Tehran sends a message to Moscow, sends a message to Beijing, and it's all girl talk, just 100% meow, meow. A servant who knows an imam, who knows a mullah says, hey, and Twitter ghouls, Republican guards, Republican low kicks, Republican astral heats, Republican barrier bursts, security experts, Paula Abdul, everyone literally is like, how about some information, please? John is browsing pictures of Iranian COVID funerals. It's just like crying with them. His daughter, Jill, is taking a foreign policy class this semester. It's just like being a diplomat. Her daughter, June, is making a poster about the Arab Spring for middle school world government class. It's just like geopolitics. The cat is freaking out because Nine Inch Nails is playing too loud over Alexa. It's just like you imagined. A Persian excursion for both heads. You and me are monsters, mimics. Day drunk on guidance, give me elixir. At night, it's a different world ascending. Good feels mimicry, eclipsing the banality of imitating the ultimate role model. A normie with the depth-giving normal map, say a quirky pair of socks, aka someone who doesn't want to shoot up a college campus. Me, a name I call myself, in between imagining my remains surrounded by the stones and bas-reliefs of betters. Relief. Relief. Numbness. The divination of 90s nostalgia. EMU paradise.me. I might open up MAME and play Shadow over Mystara. I might open up MAME and play Custer's Revenge. I might open up a browser tab and kill myself. I might open up my fist and slap myself. I might open up a hole into the next room with my closed fist. I copy behaviors I've seen. I copy behaviors I can copy comfortably. I copy paste this line. I copy paste this line. I copy paste this line. Coin operated Kamini is thinking about that time he got mobbed for his swag, Gucci Gucci. In the back room on the radio that plays all earth, wind, and fire, along with some R&B music occasionally. Someone is yelling to his daughter's daughter, I'm gonna take your grandpa style, I'm gonna take your grandpa style. Kamini witnesses, will be witnessing his burial clothes disintegrated. A crowd descends before any angelic host, snatches for scraps, Gucci, Gucci, looking just to touch the hem of his garment for one frenzied moment. Stampede. How wholly these unidentified rags steal his look. How perfect. How do I get to be the guy who jostled his husk? Initial this in the machine. A, because he don't care. Just wants to grow.
Holy
That's it.
Oh, sorry. Holy shit, man. I fucking I swear to God, I felt my pupils dilate while you were reading this. This is eye-poppingly fucking good. This is, I think, one of your best poems fucking ever, because it has everything. It has everything that makes a good Rudy Johnson piece. It has like the incredibly intricate wordplay. It has some really, really brutal, nasty fucking humor in it. It's so like rich and deep in its references, but its references don't feel like it doesn't feel purely referential, right? Like it's not just like, oh, this pop culture thing, that pop culture thing. There's a real like depth and complexity in the way that the references feed into each other and also speak to the emotional state. And man, the video game shit layered on top of the warped psychosexual shit, layered on top of the like the you know, the Khomeini shit and the Iran shit and the like US government meddling with foreign power shit. Like all of that stuff comes together in this really like wonderful knot of a poem. And that's typical for your construction, but in this one, like the way it comes together really fucking works. Like really, like I was like, like the whole fucking time. I don't know. A couple, I know I'm rambling, but a couple a couple of the lines here, was a line break here. And let me see if I can find it. That fucking blew me away. What the fuck? What was it?
I was a little more careful with the line breaks and the construction of this one, just because there were a couple things I wanted to hit. But
Yeah, there's a moment here. Oh, it's the quarter one, I think. For 1/4 century, where you're talking about Iran, right? And like the way it ends, because of the arcade thing, the way it
yeah,
ends on quarter. For 1/4, you get, you know, you think, oh yeah,
yeah,
1/4 you get, and then it's the
yeah.
century. And the way that like comes together, and then it becomes like about
Yeah, I rewrote
economic
that one a
policy.
couple of times. I think it said 25 cents, and I tried to use cents the first part. It didn't really work, but I rewrote it a quarter, so I thought it worked a little better.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah, thanks, thanks for
that's
the
fucking
close
great.
reading.
And I was laughing so hard at the Strangelove reference too, but we cannot allow a problematic age.
Yeah, I mean, see, like, just to comment on that a little bit. I don't want to take too much time, but
No, no,
Miss
go ahead.
Marvel feels like it's the show designed like for me in that way. And before I say anything further incriminating, I'll just stop right there. Yeah.
Anyway, it's really good. It's really it's really fucking funny and it's really well constructed. Are you going to publish this on Misery Tourism? Where is this going?
Sure, yeah. I mean, wherever, I don't, it
I
doesn't matter.
wasn't
I
sure
just
if it was intended for us or if it's getting shopped around, because I know you
I,
said
I was considering making a bunch of this one was made with Mid Journey. It
mhm.
helped me make the image for it, and I generated a bunch of things in Mid Journey, and then I took them into Photoshop or GIMP and cleaned them up and put them together, collage them kind of. And so I might do a chat book or something with a bunch of those
I was
pieces.
gonna say that could make for a really interesting chapbook, um, where and I'm not sure if anyone's that seems like something that's going to happen soon. It seems like an inevitable thing that someone's going to put a chapbook together that consists of a bunch of AI generated images and poems to accompany them. And I feel like if you can get there first, that's gonna be a big fucking deal, you know? Um, yeah, but thank you, man.
Thank you.
And Keko's up next. Oh, did we catch Keko on a bathroom break? Oh no. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, it's okay. It's my, I wasn't here.
Oh, okay. If you need a minute, I can skip you and come back. Oh, you're good? Okay.
That it's a culture thing. I wanted to say great. You can skip me, but
Oh, okay.
okay.
We will skip. We'll skip you, and you can be next after Alexandrine. Does that work?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. So Alexandrine is next.
Sup, y'all? It's your girl.
Yo.
I don't know that I got a whole lot. I can't believe I have to go after Rudy. I don't really have a whole lot of introduction to say about this. It was in Hobart. Some of you will recognize the it's more V shit, but yeah, that's pretty much it. This is called Mother Russia. V relapsed on April 20th, and it wasn't even on weed, it was on alcohol, which was frightening and didn't bode well. And it came shortly after Star broke up with her because she wasn't feeling fulfilled by the relationship. And while yes, Star talked too much and was suddenly unaware of certain vectors of thought, despite being exceedingly intelligent, and wouldn't let V suck her dick, there was some great sense of loss at her departure V couldn't reconcile. Perhaps how easy a landing Star had been, a local to V's new city of Chicago, who understood all her references. And so, but of course, she got back on the apps and did her thing, and it was amazing how she slipped back in, and it wasn't just tranny chasing old men she was pulling, but cute twinks and fit, handsome, girlish cross-dressers. And when she went to the lesbian app, it was almost as easy, the lesbian app being text-based and V being an above-average writer with mental problems, to the point she could get non-binary femmes with cunts, and trans girls, and even cis women, so-called biological women, notoriously hostile to trainees and yet strangely accepting of her. And she had to ask herself, am I hot or slutty? All her friends said both, which wasn't an answer. V posted on the lesbian app about going to goth night, and a girl got back to her, and so they went. The girl offering V poppers, which V had somehow never had, but then again, that wasn't too surprising, given her fear of gay spaces back when male. And while she liked the poppers, she didn't want to keep doing them, and they wound up having to take a lift to the club, which V could only pay for because she realized she could overdraw her account in order to use her credit card. And they got to the bar and got drinks and sat at a table because no one was dancing, it still being early. And V, who had been high all day and drinking since around 4 p.m., suddenly realized how fucking bored she was of all of it, of once again drinking her way through grad school in a cool city, going to goth nights with people she was or wasn't in love with. And so V thought about getting up mid-sentence and leaving and calling her old sponsor and hitting up a late night AA meeting, or maybe even just going home and getting some sleep or crying. But instead, she just listened to herself charmingly talk about nothing until she couldn't stand it and asked the girl to dance. And they did. And the DJ played some absolute jams, and the dancing was fun. And eventually it became clear that the girl wanted to fuck, but then Dominion, Mother Russia by Sisters of Mercy came on, and there was no way she wasn't going to dance to that. So even though the girls tried to leave, she kept them dancing until the end and made a joke about that song being a goth sacrament. And so they went to 7-Eleven, where V learned you can't buy alcohol past midnight in Chicago because it might be one of the largest and coolest cities in the United States, full of DIY spaces and goth nights and dive bars, but it's still the fucking Midwest. And so they just went back to V's apartment, and the girl didn't mind it was a mess, and they briefly made out, and the girl let V suck her dick, which she did for what felt like an hour, but might have been 10 minutes, but the girl couldn't come, so V got out her vibrator, which the girl had never used, and made her come with it, after which she thanked V, who said, of course, and offered her half of the bed, which she said yes to, until she was like, actually, I'm allergic to your cat. So she left, and V was left staring at her picture on the app, the gay one, not the lesbian one, looking at the girl's username, which was actually her sex work name and was the same as V's ex, Star.
This rocks. This fucking rocks. You know what I like about this is you've read a number of V pieces before, and this one is similar in style but so different in tone. And that's really remarkable because the V pieces you've read in the past have all been pitch fucking black, right? And that's good because you're really good at like teasing out like the complexities of states of like real psychological angst and torment. But this piece is like, it starts in kind of a dark place, but it's so like not even bittersweet, it's just sweet in parts, which, and yet like that sweetness, that like gentleness is like approached with the same level of like psychological complexity and like ambiguity as when you're writing about dark shit in the V voice. And so like the ability to preserve the voice while changing tone like that, I think is really remarkable. And I think this piece like adds richness to the other V pieces that way. It's fucking good is what I'm trying to say. It's a good fucking piece.
Thank you. This one is not going to be published elsewhere. It's just going to be on Hobart. It is not part of the, well, I say that, but maybe one day I'll write a sequel to the V novels, novellas, and it'll be part of that. But for now, it's just here. It's kind of an answer to like the very first one I wrote. So I'm trying to make this the very last one I write, but we'll see if that actually happens because I can't fucking stay away from this character. So yeah.
Yeah, I know those feelings. I've had like characters and voices like that too. And I and not to spoil anything for Adam, but he has a character named Larson who he uses in a lot of his poems. And he sent me maybe half a dozen final Larson poems where he's like, this is the last Larson poem ever. I want you to have it. I want you to publish it. So I think he has sent some that are actually the last Larson poems that we're going to be publishing in November, but we'll see. Anyway, Alexandrian, that was fucking awesome. Thank you so much for reading. And Keko, are you ready to roll now?
Yeah, okay. So I'll be reading a bit more poems than usual because I won't be able probably to come to the MLC until like October or something like that. So, but they're all very short, most of them, so that'll be okay. The first one is Discipline. Strikes midnight. I enter my room and lie. The hour is first. Sailing the prosperous vastness of the internet. 2:30. Lovely Italian chanson. 4:45. I'm enjoying Balkan. I found their songs while playing the most interesting arcade. 5:37. The second one doesn't have a title. Free from the day. The night, the involvement. Faster than thoughts. It's reflected in the stimulus, all the skillfulness of the senses, the plan of the task, the rough design. I'm faster than thoughts, than days and nights, cleaned, washed by the dawn. I arrived before thoughts to prepare the ground on which you're already treading. Well, since there are only a couple of people reading tonight, I'll just make some pause between the poems because it's I don't know, it's difficult to read. Just like on, I don't know, when people usually read, I like when they make some pauses if it's poetry because I can't follow. So yeah, sorry. The third one, Coward. Heart is telling me that I've gone too far. It's climbing to the throat, wants to jump out of the body. I intend to throw it up and free myself from the gall. It runs back, coward. My heart strives up and my foal's pushing it into my throat. Life or death. Symbol. Symbol. The angel of essence, link between others and children, whom signs are exterminating, appropriating ideas, ego of the epoch. Next one is the culture great, I and the text. I sat on the toilet. Little ant dropped his load. No, don't. He looked left and then right, went right then left, came back for the load, then with the load again right and up, left and down, then again right, up, left and down, and again east, north, west, south. I got up from the toilet and he, together with his load, was back on his way. Up your mothers. We used to throw planes off my building. We would burn them and watch how they blaze in the air. The flying flame. We talk about ideas. Talking leads us to ideas. Bomb fell. Flurried the organisms, battered the organs, knocked the organs out, scattered us over the flat, propelled me over the balcony into a dustbin full of cats. You're under the wall, can't see if you're alive. And another one that's titleless. My life isn't becoming sadder, my sadness is becoming fresher. Like a leaf of lemon in the summer, like a peel of mandarin in the autumn, they evaporate. I don't know their orbit. I'm lying in the garden, teaching myself not to sniff, and I offer myself to the one who helped me with the house. And I can speak German, and I didn't bother to find how they pronounce this, so it's a title of Bach's piece. Ich ruf zu dir, Herr Jesu Christ. A tear over the cheek sweetens the lip. The stream stopped, confused by consciousness. And the next one is also titleless. Snow, cold symmetry. Snow is falling on us and disappearing. And the last one, no, the last one is news of death of the elder of the moment. Oi, ye who are looking, whose eyes are jumping, ye with chocolates on your lips, ye there, who don't know but of tomorrow. When the first experience realized it wasn't the last, and when on this vast field ye heard the echo of your predecessors, directed to those mountains there, from these same fields, ye with chocolates on your lips, from these vast green fields, they hear the echo. Into the well that should have refreshed us, a voice thrown. The circles are widening, they are magically beautiful and self-same. Oh ye, don't you see? Not the heads, but the legs climb the mountain, the tallest heads, the wiriest legs. Don't yell over each other. The circles in the well are frail and precarious. Oi, ye there, who are flocking. You hear the echo. Hold the echo. It is solely ours. We don't have anything else. That's it. Sorry for too many poems. Yeah.
Not too many poems at all. Wow, holy shit. The last couple of lines of that final poem. I actually have to ask you about that final poem. Was that one written pretty recently?
Well, no, actually, these are all I never specified before. I read some translations, and you even published some of these, but
Oh, okay.
because
Rudy
I mean,
must have
because
handled the acceptance of that one.
yeah, it's because they were never published in the original, so I don't consider them like originals, and I never wanted to specify. But all of these are translations.
Oh,
This time,
okay.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the poems I read here and you published, and wherever they're published are originals. They're originally written in English, but
But this batch is translation.
yeah, those are all trans. So this is an old poem, like 5-6 years ago. Some of these are like 15 years ago, and like yeah.
They're really good fucking translations, because the reason I was wondering about that last one was I wasn't sure if it was something written
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
yeah. as you know, it wasn't sure if it was a grief poem, basically. But oh my God, those last couple of lines, like, so like perfectly capture that attempt to hold on to something from a person who's gone, you know, who has passed, and the desire to like try to recreate their voice in some way or find anything, you know, fucking literally anything you can use to keep them here with you, and the way that it all boils down to just noise and memory, right? And as the poem says, like an echo. um I want to talk about a couple of things. um Now, especially now that I know their translations, because one thing I really love about the language here is like in a few of these, there's a really sharp contrast between the title and the content of the poems. Like the culture great, I in the text. The title there sets us up to be this like this important poem. Like the title seems to underscore the importance of the poem, and even like the language you chose is like has a little bit of that like tortured kind of diction going on, that like self-importance to it. And then the whole poem is this really small, delicate poem about watching an ant, right? And the contrast there is so good, and you capture it in the language too, because as I said, like the title has this kind of pomposity to it in the language, and then the actual text is so like simple and concise and direct in its delivery, right? And you have a similar contrast thing going on with the Up Your Mother's poem, where like you think where that implies it's almost the opposite, right? Where that makes the reader believe the poem is going to be a joke, or it's going to be this little like slice of life poem about children. And it kind of is, but it's actually this depiction of this like really slapstick kind of tragedy. And the language used in the poem itself is like so I don't know, big and aggressive. I don't know how else to describe it, right? Like so dramatic, and you have that conflict there. I don't know. I really dig what you're doing here. Yeah.
Well, about that culture, the culture great and everything. There was an interesting part where I translated the ant should be it, like, but I translated it to he because there's kind of like a stupid little riddle in that title that's opposite to the text. It's like the culture great is actually me who's on the toilet, and I is actually the ant, and the text is the low. So that's like,
Oh.
I mean,
Oh,
it's a
so
silly little
that one's
riddle,
from
and it's
the title is
un,
from the ant's perspective,
yeah.
whereas the
So
poem is
yeah,
from the
yeah,
perspective of the guy on the. Oh, okay. I
yeah.
got
I
you.
mean,
I got you. So the
it's
ant is like looking up at the guy on the toilet and imagining like
yeah, yeah. I
supremacy
mean,
on the
it's
throne.
yeah. I mean, it's not like I mean, it's like a mix. It's like some. Never mind. It's
No, I
probably
get
not
what you're saying. I get what you're
successful, but
saying.
yeah. But yeah. And one up your mother's. Yeah, that's the. I had some difficulties translating it, but the how do you, what's his name? He lives in Amsterdam, I think. The Forest, or
Oh yeah, Forrest. Yeah.
he comes to, yeah. He helped me because I had to improvise a bit more because I couldn't find a verb that would be similar to the Croatian verb. It's a flurry. The Because I used it in awkward way in Croatian. It's not so. It was quite difficult to find something equivalent, and he helped me out with that. Yeah.
Cool. No, these rock. Thank you, Keko. And apparently we published some of them. Things have gotten
Yeah.
so hectic with Misery Tourism for the last couple of batches of submissions. And I think I mentioned this on Twitter. Rudy and I basically what we used to do is we would both read every submission. We would discuss all the submissions, come to like a decision on all of them, and then we would split up the we'd split up the work of responding to the submissions and posting the work on the website. But as of a couple of batches ago, what we've been doing is it's divided from minute one. So when the submission comes in, it's earmarked as either being for Rudy or for me. And then it goes down the whole chain that way through to publication, with a few exceptions where sometimes like Rudy or I will, like a game will come to me or something, and I'll be like, no, Rudy, you should handle this. This is a game. And or a piece will come to Rudy that's like obviously trying to be like some like heavy existential thing or something, and Rudy will be like, this, I don't like this, but you might. So yeah, but yeah, so I actually, this is actually my first time seeing these poems, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, none of these are the ones you published. It's like, yeah, the hate and admiration in the late night hour, if you remember, about the internet.
Yes,
It's
yep,
like,
I do
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's actually a translation. Yeah, and
Gotcha,
but
gotcha.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it really isn't important. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, was Rudy about to say something? I saw his mic unmute and then mute. I don't want
Nope.
to. Okay, cool, cool. All right, so thank you so much, Keko. Gianluca's next.
Hey everybody, how's it going? What's up?
Not bad. Do you have the link for this one? I don't have it in the document yet.
Oh, I think I DM'd you it on the Misery Tourism account.
Okay,
Sorry.
then Rudy might have it. Do you have it, Rudy?
I think I lost it on my tab. Let me. I pulled it up. I did see it though. Let me grab it.
Gotcha, gotcha.
All right, here it is.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent, excellent. Oh yeah, this is just more of the book, I guess. And I don't know. Maybe you know, there was one person I read it to, and they said maybe that the use of rape in one element was a bit tasteless, maybe. So, you know, I don't know, maybe if anyone wants to give feedback on that, if it's not too awkward, or maybe not, who knows. But anyway, I guess this was all for anyway. Okay, I will now read it. Okay, here goes. Because this is 10 pages, so you know, better probably go quick. All right, here goes. Eris returned home. It seems that people are still in their offices. Our absence of a government has seemingly determined it is an essential part of people's psyches. No staying home for these individuals, but I suppose their turning out proves it was correct. There would be little consequence for staying home. Work becomes an abusive daycare. God bless the 3 or 4 aristocrats who didn't piss off to rape alien prostitutes. We couldn't shut things down, couldn't give the children a break, or let the impoverished into the many empty houses so they aren't murdered by a rioter. No, that would be too statist of us, said Beaufort. You look at the world through binoculars and shake your head, but your words say nothing. Even if they reached an audience, it would only inspire hearty chuckles from the kinds of people who read Marina Hyde. The children would still be beaten, the world would still be ending, the working man would still be forced into labor during the apocalypse, for unlike the white-collar worker you decided to focus on, blue collars are prosecuted and they refuse to punch in. Storytellers and column writers are of little consequence, for they only affect the opinions of those who have little societal power. Do you think the elite care about crapped out poetry regarding the plight of the underclass? Or the uninformed opinions peppered with sexual innuendo of the average columnist? No, not for an excess of taste, but rather that because they exist in a different atmosphere through which only violence can pierce. One can relate the problems of the world until death. That will change nothing. I may have changed things before, but reality has rightfully fractured. The people in power simply exist in a different world to you and I. Both political parties have contempt for our interests, with one only interest in using the other as a selling point. We're not the other side. They will fund opposition candidates they see as too extreme, and note with horror that they have handicapped themselves, for it is the moderate that is dying out, not the extremist. In regards to that, the only appropriate reaction is exasperation that this death had not come sooner. By the way, quick lore thing here. This happens after Eris gets teleported to certain places by a bolt of lightning. Anyway, not that relevant. Never mind. So we just give up, and noting the world's problems is a fun pastime. Spend your time however you please, dearest fiance. But if there was any appropriate opportunity to give up, it would be the end of the world. We are the elite that thinks it isn't the elite. We are safely insulated from the bastards down below. I admire the rioters. You know what they say? The anus is solar, the lungs are miraculous, and it's time to go ape shit. Not incorrect, I suppose. No suppose about it. So you sympathize? I agree. A little Darwinian. No more than what came before, except now it is in the name of beauty. Only when the Mona Lisa was defaced did it become a work of art. Only in the moment where cake was smeared across its surface did the Louvre become an art gallery. Let every painting be defaced. Let children be painted blue and crawl along the walls. Only then could these monuments to vanity be called art. Perhaps so. I think I am a man. For a long time, I considered whether I was a woman. I couldn't imagine you with larger tits. You're halfway there already. Perhaps identity is built on the perception of the self as beautiful. Recently, I gazed upon a man and realized his beauty. All my life, I thought of man as ugly and women as beautiful. But now I realize that things are fine. I don't feel the need to change myself. Is it misanthropic to consider all humanoid beings amassed with each individual simply a limb of a larger organism? That's what they are. It's true before it's misanthropic. Technology reveals the totality of the self regardless of one's sanity. And if the truth is too much for the individual, then it's better for the individual to be broken. For truth is always above man. But the man will always lie to himself. So he will be broken by a bigger truth, but it will be permitted for him to dodge smaller truths. Why? Because bigger truths are more important. And so necessity becomes porous. The smaller lies slip through the gaps, but who determines the holes of size? I don't know. Sometimes I think it would be nice. There needs to be more than that, right? God, it's a little late now. I hate that about people. They say if the world was to end, why start any project? Or if you're soon to be black bagged for doing that, cease. But I'd rather live according to principle. The vicissitudes of the fashionable opinion have nothing to do with me, and neither does the will of nature. Let everyone else do as they will. Isn't that the individualism you railed against before? Yes, perhaps, but the freedom to do as one pleases stands in direct opposition to so-called economic freedom. I refer not to what I owe to my neighbors, but to their silly opinions. Their frivolities have nothing to do with the social contract. A free speech absolutist? Perhaps I'd certainly like to be. Ultra Gold or Pipeline Punch. Those are the only flavors in the fridge. Pipeline Punch, please. Sure thing. You'll still be you and still have the dick, right? Yeah. And I don't really care whether you go through with it. Wonderful. Thank you. No problem. It was ridiculous of me to believe that a computer created the world. Glad you recognize that. It was a false narrative. Who knows where it came from? Lady Antebellum was forcing kidney stones up Mr. A's urethra with a stick. His body was impervious. By the way, quick lore. Basically, hell it is split up into two sections. There are the aristocrats who torture one another out of dissatisfaction and with one another for social reasons, to establish, in a sense, the hierarchy of their own, insular relationships. And there are, in a sense, the others who are forced out, and in a sense, due to the laws of hell, in a sense, become animals, with the men locked in endless conflict, and the women forced to bear children that the men see as nothing more than vessels to be reborn into. Because when a man dies, he gets reborn into the soul of a child, in a sense, into the body of a child. Anyway, Lady Antebellum was forcing kidney stones up Mr. A's urethra with a stick. His body was impervious to structural damage. The penis could not split apart. Instead, it stretched to accommodate the particularly large ones. The stick was heated at the end. This torture was motivated by Mr. A humiliating her at a previous ball. Not pervious. Previous ball, in an attempt to become the dominant partner and pay her back for the previous 100 years of torture, he spread a rumor that she was promiscuous, which caused her associates to view her poorly. Every cut felt as if it were the first. The heart that pumped dispassionately above the estate had grown clogged with fat and was leaking blood. Lady Antebellum was distracted by a drop of blood falling past the window in the corner of her eye. Oh, she said. A is A, Mr. A whispered to himself. A is A, A is A. She is right to torture me, for she has exhibited the necessary strength and will. Once I gain the upper hand, she will accept her position, and it will be good. I will beat her senseless, and she will profess her love to me, for she will respect me. This will make sense, as one thing will lead to another. We gain pleasure from the expression of hierarchy, so it is logical that we remain together. It appears, said Lady Antebellum, that we are facing the end of our torment. Mr. A lay there, uncomprehending. No, he whined, his penis clogged, his desire unsatisfied. The chamber tore open, the tear resembling a lightning bolt, and blood washed the house away from its foundations. The women outside the estate were nude and staring at the floor. They had not looked up. Their drowning came as a surprise to them. The men hid their children in caves, but the blood found its way into every crevice. Hell was free. It did not exist. Anselm Wretch was a pornographer, purely interested in the contours of his actors' faces. He hired not on the basis of genitals or conventional beauty, but instead Based on the face's relation to the letterbox, he paid no mind to whether the actors' handlers had abused them, their origins, how they got into the business. Any concern for their feelings was utilitarian in nature. Had to get them into the right mindset to perform. The seeming lack of total focus on bestial pumping gave the films a veneer of respectability. He died middle class and moderately respected. As sex scenes were filmed in a workmanlike fashion, sensuality being reserved for the conversation scenes. Anselm was aroused by faces on film, for they were the only things that conveyed any beauty to him. Abstract shapes, immaculate mimetic replication of tables, words upon formless words, music that did indeed soar, but did so mechanically, and thus attracted as much interest as the regular ascension of the commercial aeroplane. None of it was superb. Faces existed through chance and were not subject to the tyrannical yoke of semiotics. We watched D.W. Griffith's The Country Doctor many times, as the faces in the films of the era were expected to do so much more. He didn't delude himself that he could train his occasionally enslaved subjects to engage in such virtuosic muscle manipulation. Nonetheless, it served as an ideal, a guide. Certain critics, convinced of their need for a particular hook to distinguish themselves, argued his films were masterpieces. Nobody believed it. Anselm certainly didn't. It was a belief that only existed in concept. A rhetorical trick in a war between overpaid culture critics. Anselm died long before Gerpug, Beaufort, Orpus, or Eris were born. He was, however, fatally struck to death by lightning while walking to his car after the rap party for Siegfried Superbium, Wagner-inspired pornographic epic. During the autopsy, traces of bronze were found in his bloodstream. Eris and Beaufort decided to attend a podcaster party. They hired someone else to drive the limousine. The wine glasses were filled with apple juice. It was prom night all over again. Don't worry about it. These guys are retarded champagne socialists. They'll think you're cool for it. Seriously, said Eris. Eris convinced Beaufort to try cross-dressing. That's reassuring, I suppose. How does it feel? Strange. No shit. Among the partiers were postmodern hyperdengists, ultra-Jucheists with Landian characteristics, patriotic Fisherite, neo-Leninists, and White Claw drinkers of indeterminate political outlook. In one room, there was a screening of the 2021 cult classic, Scary of 61st. Beaufort was self-conscious. He regretted his decision. He had an erection. He considered this shameful. Some people laughed at him, while others were eyeing him up. Another gigahon to destroy the asshole of, they thought to themselves. Beaufort went to the toilet. There was a great diversity of political opinion, but such range was a product of self-customization and identity consumption rather than principled belief. For as they fractured into smaller and more ludicrous groups, the Twitter posters and leftist podcasters became increasingly concerned with the number of adjectives they could apply to themselves, the rules of their scene, and whether they were countering the social mainstream. Was the correct way to signal dissent toward the liberal establishment Catholicism, or was it Russian orthodoxy, or was it self-improvement lest the left grow too permissive of perceived mediocrity, or was it the sun god, or was it becoming anti-vaccination? All were united against a liberal menace and had the exact same motivation for doing so, all leading to all political difference becoming entirely aesthetic in nature. In the host's bedroom, two alternative literature authors were staring at an unconscious woman sprawled on the bed covers. It seems she passed out, said Seneca Saccharin. Indeed, agreed Darren Distert. Should we do something to her? Such as, say it with your chest, don't be a coward, rape her. We could get away with it. Certainly, we would get away with it, certainly. It would certainly be an interesting addition to my new work of autofiction, Life Log. I can imagine the passage now. 1034, raped a woman. Wow, my God, that is honestly pretty powerful. Holy shit, I might cry. The tragedy, the simplicity, the tension between our protagonist's apathy and the horrific nature of the subject. Oh my God, we are fucking geniuses. I'm glad you think that. We take life in all of its mundanity and horror and we spin it into gold. If anything, this is for the benefit of our readers. The woman sprang awake. She saw two men in front of her. One of them was in the process of unzipping his trousers. She ran away. Bummer, said Seneca. I probably would have won like a bajillion awards. Eris banged on the door of the men's toilets. Hey, you okay in there? They think you're cool, trust me. They're funny too, some of them anyway. I didn't mean to hurt you. I can show you to some nice ones. Please talk to me. I know I fucked up a little. I need you to be okay. I need you to say something. Just talk to me, please. The testimony of the near rape victim was regarded as untrue due to Saccharin and Distert's status within the scene. Their friends were more than willing to back them up due to ideological/aesthetic agreements and not wanting to consider their colleagues to be rapists. Some of them were guilty of the same crimes, but were far more successful and prolific. She was crying profusely as she was exiled. Silence permeated the rooms. The miasma was thick and heavy. The Scary of 61st was still playing, but people's minds had not caught up to time's progression, caught by an earlier frame. A short, depth of field close-up, the eyes brighter than they truly were, hatred, nausea, and tears. Oppenheimer, the stoat, was indifferent. Unbroken, weightless, first-person tracking shot. The coughing was quiet background noise, unaccompanied by music stings. He faced Eris. Hey, if you think about it, it's not that big a news story. In the 2020s, people predicted 20 years for the really bad shit to occur. Now the food is grown hydroponically, and the third world is underwater. Nobody particularly cares, but the falsity of our rituals are beginning to become apparent. We are slowly realizing that we're not immune. The artificial sky keeps us cool, but eventually the flooding will reach us. The walls of our particular city will not hold. We will be one of the last localities to be swallowed. The news of the impending apocalypse has only accelerated what was already there. The cities close to being engulfed tried to implement policies, but the lack of strong government to enforce those policies aptly took hold, and perhaps rightfully so, as we have long passed the point at which we can avoid our fate. The world ends with a bright flash, or the world ends with mass drowning. The former seems preferable. It is as if God himself has come to initiate the rapture of humanity. In a world where nature itself has been faked, primitivism becomes a parody of itself in an extreme form of vanity. This is the world we're living in, and it is inescapable. To not accept that makes you a sap, not a rebel. You won't be saying that when the day comes. When the seventh trumpet sounds, you'll be crying and begging for more time like the rest of us. Yes, you're right. But this talk of human folly and of the mass death is irrelevant to me. I didn't cause that. I didn't ask to be born into this world. I just do what I like to do, and then the world will end, regardless of my thoughts. You talk of the falsity of our rituals, but what would you rather us do? Love one another? Really? God, yes, of course. If everyone should simply be honest with one another, then there would be so much peace. Are you truly so naive? Perhaps. I really must attend to my friend. Shout at him some more, exacerbate his embarrassment? Absolutely. Don't condescend to him. Everybody thought he was terribly funny. Did you? Well, more tragic than anything. Pink skirt and black lipstick? Not his look. Who gave him the idea? Me. Well, I hope he learns not to consider your advice in the future. Wanker. Is that how you view the world? The elite whom you are a part of? The elite you are a part of as a cabal of incestuous degenerates, and the people below to whom you extend worthless sympathy as a coiling, undifferentiated mass? You're not exactly moral yourself. Piss off. Eris and Beaufort walked side by side silently. Eris decided to initiate conversation. How is being a woman? Terrible. Yeah. Not exactly the best introduction, though. I'm going to blame you for that one. Kind of threw me in the deep end there. They were lefties. I expected them to be nice. They were internet lefties, well-connected lefties. Trust fundamentalists, whose only vaguely left-wing opinion is that the healthcare should be subsidized. No true Scotsman. That's all you got to say? I don't know. Got to avoid that purity spiral, right? Yeah, sure. Gatekeeping. I know you thought you were doing something nice, but I also blame myself a little. I should have thought about it more. What was I expecting? Going to a party like that? I don't know. I guess I didn't consider it myself. Yeah. I don't really care about bullshit like the purity spiral. You know that. I was just saying something. Just discourse. A war between egos. I wanted to win because if I won, you'd consider me wise. If you consider me wise, you think that my reasoning for bringing you there was good. Yeah, I know. I love you. I know. I love you too. But I mean it. Yeah, I know. Trust me. All right. What did you think you were going to get out of this? You get out of yourself. Stop looking at the world through binoculars. Start talking to people other than me. Stop involving yourself in my silly jobs. You'd still be my husband, but maybe someone else. Beaufort put his arm around his shoulder. Hey, I suppose it was necessary. I hate my dick. The end of the world happened to occur when I was in my penis phase. Quick lore. Her genitals cycle every couple of months. A dick, vagina, conical drill that turns when activated, and a ball of twine that you have to tickle. When I thought about dying, I always imagined my corpse with a vagina. I know that's a silly, narcissistic, vulgar thing to say, but it's true. At least the tangled knot, you know? The apocalypse came at a somewhat inconvenient time. There won't be a corpse to observe, babe. Oh yeah, there won't be a corpse to observe. I won't have anything. I won't die as what I consider myself, as there won't be anything to identify. Nobody gets to die as themselves, Eris. That's not what dying is. I suppose, yeah. I'm happy obsessing over you, all right? I don't need to talk to the others. All right, I accept that. Sometimes I feel we don't have much to talk about. I don't know, I think we do. Okay, why are you obsessed with me anyway? Why am I the exception to the antisocial nature? You're easy to understand. You like watching The Bachelor and pretending to work. You like hanging out and drinking some Monster. When I'm ordered around, there are concrete and unambiguous steps I can take to fulfill your desires. I think you're beautiful and kind of smart. When I talk to you, your answers are not sullied by the impulse to market oneself. You take me seriously, but also order me around. I don't get that kind of understanding from anyone else. That makes sense. You don't like that people talk ambiguously, extruding hot mist from their orifices. Their eyes focus on the vanishing point behind your head. I, however, speak in a manner akin to a stream or a flow of excrement. Distant from the guarded and ugly nature of the human, I make my insecurities clear and manifest, for I know not else how to behave. Contrary to the contrivances of the mediocre romantics, the universe is coldly rational. It contains nothing other than itself, and yet irrationality is forced upon it. Why must we act as if the movements of the moon are not beautiful in and of themselves, absent of meaning, symbology, or forced displays of emotion? To describe the moon and to witness it is to be in the presence of something superior to all attempts at poetry. Magritte realized this, of course. He turned his attention to logic and the experience that allowed for gaps in rationality to occur. Actuality has blessed us with flawed sight. Magritte thus depicts reality of experience rather than colonizing it with ugly symbols. On the other end is the occult, which seeks to tame the irrational and make it do the wizard's bidding. Little do they realize that the gaps in rationality exist purely to confuse us, or rather for reasons that are of little relevance to our small lives. The objects that determine such things exist outside our purview. They come to us of our own will. And so their obscene and transactional rituals become avenues for revenge, as the gods rightfully drive those arrogant bastards mad. Ritual is the highest level. Let gods bless who they please. Hey, can I tie your shoelaces? You're undone. Stop walking. Eris obliged, and Beaufort knelt down to tie her shoelaces. Once he was done, he looked up to her. Deeply sorry, babe. It appears I am having a heart attack, he stated, then keeled over and died. Eris knelt down beside his corpse and hugged it. No, she whispered in the corpse's ear. Back in the party space, the stairs had become crooked. Ein Sof stood before a crowd of people. Their homes being bombed out and their bodies mutilated by shrapnel. You know, they despise you, make up all these fancy words. This is a cult. They never allow you to question their concepts. You have to march in lockstep with them. You have to agree with their framing, or you're a bigot, a psycho. You have all this power, however, the power to confront them. The elites, the bastards took this from you. God, I despise intellectuals. Intellectuals were the ones who built the atomic bomb, but who paid the price? Common people such as yourselves. People who tell you, people tell you that the enemies are rich, but no, your enemies are the people who tell you that you aren't good enough. People who consider themselves better than you. If only we could purge the mediocre, the ugly, and the base from this world, but they won't let us. The so-called liberal society doesn't allow for these kinds of opinions. So what do? They silence us. The world is being too soft on the demi-humans. Their shapes may be different, but that's the issue. Why must the world change for such a small minority? Perhaps we can instead shave them with their fur and make them stand in fast food freezers. In their arrogance, they ask for special treatment. Well, let us give it to them, and all the well-bleeding heart types will do nothing. In fact, in their hearts of heart, they already find them disgusting. They play along for brownie points. That is what disgusts me. The base hypocrisy of it all. The division isn't left and right. It's between those who create and those who destroy. Those who praise mediocrity, allowing for culture to degenerate, and those who deny it. My friends, you are already perfect. Your history has been distorted. And the elite quaff wine and dine at the Four Seasons. The elite look down on McDonald's. But in fact, it is a morally upright food, a food of the people. If you sign up to my course, you too can learn how to improve yourself, to remove all doubts, to transform your self-hatred into rocket fuel, to cut out the losers holding you back. The lepers, the lepers, the disfigured, the one-armed, and the blind were not interested in the lecture. Ein Sof had not provided any reason to believe that he could improve their lives. To get a higher vantage point, he climbed up the ruins of a house. Your thoughts are what determine your life outcome. If you're suffering, it just means you weren't thinking correctly, he shouted. Totenkopf climbed up the rubble and whispered into Ein Sof's ear, have you considered being more motivational? Oppenheimer, the stoat, resided in a geodesic dome located in the woods. Eris had been escorted there after he noted her excessive inebriation. She seemed to have either forgotten her address or been uninterested in returning it. That morning, Eris confronted his letter and ridiculed him for even considering the former. It did seem like a plausible option at the time, perhaps owing to his lack of knowledge regarding the effects of alcohol, as he was undisposed to it. Eris pointed out the irony in his condemning those who sought out nature while residing within the contemporary artificial recreation. Oppenheimer acknowledged his hypocrisy. He pointed out there was no point in the entire city where one could not receive a mobile signal. Eris considered that a good thing. Oppenheimer agreed. It's very realistic, you know, the forest. It's so akin to the genuine article that I sometimes consider the distinction irrelevant. A magnificent library of many 100-hour-long birdsong recordings are played through speakers embedded in the trees. I suppose I differentiate myself merely through honesty. I admit my vanity. There can be no room for eco-fascism or the belief that nature makes a man stronger, and not simply because the eco-cause has been utterly defeated. Our reconstruction of nature has allowed it to be defanged, all the better for a fit intellectual such as I to pollute it with our presence. But this place is like a museum, unfashionable to visit. It is considered educational, a shallow imitation. No, I love it. I love the randomly shuffled playlist of birdsong. The trees made of lab-grown fungi, cultivated to resemble as closely as possible the feel and structure of a tree. The grass made of soft plastic. I rub it between my thumb and forefinger and consider whether what my ancestors felt could ever have been as perfect. There's nothing our city exists in opposition to. We are walled off, and nature exists only conceptually. We may as well be the last people on Earth. And so with no one to observe us and no one to critique, we aimlessly spread and engage in ritual. Our world has become insular like a sickly child. There are no principles anymore, only aesthetics and rhetorical tricks. In our dying world, there's no one left to fight a war against. These fascists preach fullness of being that wraps skin around the disparate machines that compose us. The fullness of being is the fatness of I. As we drift from the binding of the self with ugly and inhumane rules, we reach instead awareness of our disparate nature. Okay, fuck, holy shit. The Satanism can either be of a state-sponsored type, an adolescent type, or a deviant type. All exist under the banner of Satanism, however. Rather, the acceptance of being possessed by vicissitudes. The noumena haunt us thusly. I saw you staggering. You seemed willing. Are you disturbed by my course of action and the circumstance you find yourself in? Please do not strike me. My intentions were noble. My cross-dressing fiance is dead. I don't know anything about that stuff. Walking at night was rather freeing. The cold felt so good against my skin and fur. I lay down on the ground and no one was around to look. The sky from such a vantage point was populated by insubstantial clouds that were spaced out above a gray that had a peculiar fullness. I could appreciate the landscape free of the presence of others, and so could put myself out of my mind, or rather throw myself from my eyes. I could operate as an impartial camera. I saw a fox that day. I regularly see mice or skinned cats, but not foxes. I took a couple pictures, but they were all blurry. Apologies. If I had known your fiance was about to die, I would have feigned sympathy. Thank you. No problem. I've always loved animals. Here's the thing. Humans dislike us because we remind them of ours having been designed. Okay. Whew.
This is awesome, and it's awesome for all the reasons that your writing is usually awesome. But I'm going to talk about it in a second. But I have to ask you a question first. Did you really send this to your mom to read?
I did read it to my. I did read all of that to my mother. Yeah.
How did she?
Hell yeah.
How did she respond? Because I can only.
She liked it very much.
I just, I guess it's just not the kind of writing you imagine, like, you know, giving to your parents to read. But that aside, that aside, man, I love this. This is, I was particularly blown away by the really nasty satirical section about the internet left. And it's feels very timely given the present discourse. But oh my God, like the vain, like trying to decide what ideology would be like the best answer to liberalism based purely on vibe, and all of that whole section is so unrelentingly like vicious but very, very funny. and as usual, though, like it's incredible how you've managed to merge like these like philosophical dialogues with really sharp, funny satire, with just completely absurd shit, with actually in this case, as like was becoming increasingly clear as you read, like a real like through line too, in terms of like plot. Like there are things that are actually happening here in the midst of all this chaos. Like there's still like this clarity of vision, this sense of like you're on this journey that you've never really, that you get distracted from but never really completely lose sight of. Have you by any chance seen any of Roy Anderson's films, like Songs from the Second Floor, or his most recent one is about endlessness?
I've seen Pigeon sitting on a branch reflecting on existence.
Yeah, that's a really good one as well. And this, while those films are different in tone than this, there's something similar about the structure. Does that make sense to you? Like that
Yeah.
there's this kind of similar feeling of this like series of vignettes that are kind of philosophical, but are also very much existing in this same universe. And there's still this unfolding larger like plot that the viewer is often obscured from the viewer, but then like is like gradually revealed to them, and is often sometimes hidden in asides. And yeah, anyway, this has vibes similar to that, and that's very much a compliment, because Anderson is like one of my all-time favorite filmmakers.
Thank
yeah,
you very much.
yeah,
And yeah, it was typically rather long, and I apologize for that. But thank
No,
you very
no.
much.
We don't have
Thank
many
you.
people signed up to read tonight, you know? It's the perfect night to read a long piece.
I love the gesturing going on when you were reading it. That was very powerful. Your gestures while you were moving, and you're very animated during the piece. And it was cool because it was a really animated piece with dialogue with like back and forth. And also to follow up a question William asked, did you do the asides when you read it to your mother?
No, I think she was aware of the overall like lore and context, so it's cool.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. No, that's definitely cool.
Can I ask a question real quick of Angus? Yeah, I'm wondering, like, what's your if any author like inspired this? Like, who's your boy or girl in this case? Because I'm really wondering. I'm seeing shades of like 20 different authors, and I'm not sure which one it is.
I wouldn't really know how to like I guess I usually just kind of like I'm usually just kind of inspired usually by like what I'm reading at the moment. I think like I guess I'm sorry, I don't know. I guess the only real answer could be like what I'm reading at the moment. I guess like I'm like there's like an idea for a sex scene I have that's kind of inspired by me reading like Delta of Venus at the moment. So I don't know. That's just I just kind of like read stuff and then I say, oh, that's nice, and then I implement it.
That's like the best fucking answer. Thank you so much.
And it makes sense too, because the piece has such a like collage, the writing has such a like collage feel to it, that it would make sense that you would have a lot of different inspirations. The author I'm always most reminded of when you read is Voltaire, although there's definitely a huge gap in style, but just in terms of like the mixing of political and social satire with philosophy, and the like digressive nature of it, like kind of reminds me of Voltaire. But thank you, man, thank you for reading again. And Jesse's up next.
Hello.
And just quickly, Jesse's the last one on the docket, but it's only 9:30, so we could probably have a couple more people read if they wanted to. So just put it in the chat if you do. Sorry, Jesse, it's all yours.
Fine. I think I want to make an interesting comment. I'm sitting in my bedroom right now, and the screen of my computer is the only light source. And somewhere a lot of bugs have gotten into this room. So I wish I could take a picture and show it to all of you what my screen looks like. It's just like crawling with bugs right now. And I don't know how they got in, but it's pretty, it feels apocalyptic. And
That's
it feels
incredible.
like nature is invading and taking back civilization or something like that, you know. Okay, these were two poems that were published in Maximus Mag, issue 2. So I'll read them. Sorcerer and a Dream, many entrances, one exit. Sorcerer. A tarantula of piss crawled around inside his bladder. Waking him up is how the story started. He grabbed his phone to screenshot a dream image just upon waking, unthinking. Patricia Lockwood saying the phone's contents more real than the world's. Much later, he was given a Jackson Pollock to forge into another painting. Is he up to it? Imagining something is a hyperlink when it isn't is playing the devil's kickball. No one calls them hyperlinks anymore, by the way, is what his apprentice told him once the brooms got put away.
Jesse, I'm very sorry. I just accidentally muted you. I had a new person join the room and I went to mute their mic and they had already muted it. I'm really sorry. If you want to go back to imagining something as a hyperlink. Oh, Jesse, you're still muted though. You'll need to unmute manually because
Okay, there I go.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that.
Totally fine. Imagining something as a hyperlink when it isn't is playing the devil's kickball. No one calls them hyperlinks anymore, by the way, is what his apprentice told him once the brooms got put away. And don't pester the online Nadja anymore for the rest of the century. You are not Breton. Second poem, A Dream, many entrances, one exit. Little terrorist kid destroys a floor, misbehaves, dances crazily with drumsticks in front of a video composite of another child trying to blot her out. Going to check on a musty P.O. box at a college campus I once attended. I forgot the number, but anyway, they gave it to me. There's a poem wrapped in plastic inside. I must have put it there during the pandemic year. Can't remember what the poem was about, but the script was interesting. You could place it in time by comparing orthographic marks with my other written drafts from other eras. Letters with ligatures alike, like Arabic calligraphy. The handwriting analyst tells entrance tales. The storyline hovered on the edge of significance, but I got the feeling once the exit was reached, a clarifying shockwave would be sent backwards through the mystery narrative. But no aha moment, no coherence bubblegum, can't tell the itch from the scratch, and bathtubs smell like electrified cum.
Jesse, those were awesome as usual. I apologize again about muting you.
That's-
There are so many. I love your poems because there's something really remarkable, because on the one hand, like, they're really dense with imagery, right? But on the other hand, they don't read dense. Does that make sense to you? Like, sometimes poems have this kind of like almost impenetrable kind of density, but your poems have this like kind of pulp propulsive property. I should not be alliterating like that, but like where you keep reading them and they fly by very quickly, but yet there's a real density to the imagery and a real vividness to the imagery. So none of it doesn't feel like surface. It feels like moving very quickly through very deep water, and oh my gosh, I have to say that turn of phrase no coherence bubblegum in the last poem, man, I love that. I'm actually like honestly deeply jealous of that. And just like the vivid imagery throughout that last poem is just, and that the sense of like trying to reconstruct life through language that you have there, where you're like poring over the marks on the paper, not even the words, but like the handwriting itself to try to construct and reconstruct meaning. I don't know, it's just a really powerful thought and a really powerful image. Anyway, Jesse, it's really fucking good.
Thank you. I go through cycles where sometimes I'm writing prose and then sometimes I'm writing poetry and sometimes I'm drawing pictures. And I've tried to get into writing poetry more lately, and I just like the feeling of space, or I don't want to say negative space, but like space to kind of breathe in something.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time with really anyway, it's an interesting whole other area, and I appreciate what you said about how it's like dense but also kind of sparse at the same time. That is a good goal, I guess, to go for. Writing about dreams, it feels like it could go really badly and be just a bunch of things that are not interesting to anybody but me. Anyway, thank you for listening. And the bugs are still here. The bugs are crawling over everything. So
Well, how appropriate that the first poem opened with tarantulas, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jesse. Grapes is up next. I think it's Grapes.
Yes, good evening.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, everyone. So, okay, so I just have two pieces, and this one is He Shot Up. I watched him do this, happy now that he got his fix. We walked, or rather, we ran down the sidewalk as I sauntered behind. He stole me some beers. He got me an agua fresca from Chipotle. On exiting the Chipotle, I sip the agua fresca until it clicks in my mind. This cup is meant for the beer, so we won't get an open container ticket. We walk to the shore and watch the sun set. We sit together. He's an addict and I am too. The sky is saturated blue. Okay. This one is titled "Fuck You, I'll Do What I Need." Moth lands by my foot. A colorful red bug caresses my elbow. He wrote our initials in blood, his, on the paper napkin. We, nothing. We kiss. We go. We said goodnight. It's over the day. He smacks smack of a Narcan bay. Whoa.
Michelle, those were awesome. I love the way that first poem, the pair of final lines. Oh, I can't even remember exactly what you said, but the like, he was an addict and I was too, and then the sky was something blue. That like, especially after what came before, like the poem prior to that is so like frank and direct and kind of like narrative in its construction, for it to like become like rhyming poetry at the very end, I think is not only like a really cool like stylistic touch, but also really complements the substance of that poem, because it's this kind, it comes as this kind of like romantic realization, right? Like there's a kind of like drabness to that day prior to that moment. It's like, oh yeah, like you're kind like two people kind of vibing, right? Kind of like, but in this kind of like sort of like, you know, the detached mediocre way people kind of get to know each other, and then there's that moment of like brilliance, and the way you've like communicated that without saying that at the end of the poem is, I think, really really striking, I think, and effective. Anyway, they were fucking awesome. Thank you. So we have, I think, two more people here. Oh, okay, we already got Carter. So we've got Adam, and then we have Carter. Adam, so I think the poems you want to read are the Last of Larson ones. Is that? I wanted to make sure I dug up the last document. It's funny, Adam, because I was actually talking about those poems with Alexandrine before you joined. Because Alexandrine was talking about how she envisioned the piece she read as being like the last in the like V series of pieces. And I mentioned how you had kind of sent me a set of poems that were supposed to be the last of the Larson series. So
yeah, okay, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's just four. The first one's called Sordid Larcening. Betimes he ain't no culture vulture, Larson that is. He is bleeding out on lace curtains after his last visitation to the flesh pot, where he did engage himself to gum sucking and hanging. He is not all bad. He did support civil unions during all the Bush dynasty. He has one foot in the graveyard and the other in a 7-Eleven where he feigns madness so as to get free beef jerky. Outside he twists and untwists pussy. Ratherish, Larson heads to Pete's, who is swindling Ubers with Facefuck. It's an old Buick Riviera routine. Facefuck's fingers are sticky with sour apple Jolly Ranchers and remnants of canine groping. He gets a kick out of the lipstick. He has killed 14 dogs in his lifetimes. Only males, though. The females he makes out with. Facefuck and Pete and Larson go down to Hudson Yards and harass tourists. Larson slips his clutch with a stranger. They beat it to a motel. Larson is knocked out from behind with a rope around his neck and wakes up in hospital. He cognizes the nurse, the one from whom he defenestrated his own self. She is snarky and ill-tempered. She draws blood and chokes out Larson. With this, Larson is thrilled, so she hammers his testicles and says that does it. Larson sees stars and begs for morphine, which is accidentally denied. This one's called Auto Thievering insofar as flyover. Interstate by interstate, Larson is driver's seating, naked, except his anus is plugged, hidden vibrations. The battery is near dead. He is reading a novel and going about 80, soft weaving. The novel is by Evan S. Connell and takes place in the Bay. Larson is sobbing over when he almost killed himself. He rear ends a semi slightly and exits the interstate. Nearby the truck stop, Larson cuts a deal with a lot lizard, the kind that shoots from hand dryers and makes 20s in flea bags. They split Elkie, dish out Hummers jointly. Larson departs, his wagon is gone. He is thumbing out for any chappie. He has emptied his pockets and his interior sack. He is sad as all hell. This is called Larson Thinks of Going Down to Davy Jones' Locker and Does. In a hellish truck stop, Larson is seeking a redress of grievances against some Jane that was kind of simple and denied him a lottery payment as the scratch off was indiscernibly and the like. Larson has 2 dead dogs in his caddy. They were, quote, rescued, unquote, according to himself. In his lifetimes, Larson has sent no fewer than 14 dogs to the Marble Orchard, all of them males. He is kindly to the females, of which he French kisses. He is not completely formed, and yet he seeks carnal knowledgings. Larson is high on pig irons, storms out of the store, tears at his hair, and peels out with a .21 BAC and some little high from huffing Sharpies. So, pigeon-eyed, he heads for Niagara Falls. It will be just him and the 2 dead dogs in his supremely wooden barrel. Onlookers gave recountings, said they seen the barrel, and from within it, at the edge, a blood-curdling cowabunga. Last one is St. LaCroix Cemetery, November 8th, 2022. Spencer is back leaning against the gravest headstone of Larson. Larson did it, finally and kind of accidentally, knowing the chips were down. It was an openly casket, for which Larson got himself a continental haircut special. They buried him with his brass knuckles. Wood pussy bald fits, ingested powder. Christ, it's the 0 hour, gripes Spencer, who was deep lunging a marijuana cigarette. He is whistling Larson's favorite tune, which ain't Night in Tunisia. He is hungry. His thong itches. Spencer kicks at the grass. So Spencer raids Larson's bank account. He is the executor after all. He is his self thinking of hemlock or a hempen cravat. We can't all die in clover. Having located the wampum, he tears at his thong, calls Wrinkle Rod, buys uppers and dials the cremation society. Then he calls Warmwise Lonnie, who dances naked and fucks like Deepwater. That's it.
Adam, these are so good. These are so good. And they're the perfect send-off, I think, for Larson. I think I said this in my email, but I love the idea of Larson dying, as you say in the poem yourself, like kind of accidentally. Like the idea that this is a man who, like, throughout this series of poems has always lived in this kind of weird space, like halfway between intentional self-destruction and just like slapstick anarchy, and to go out in the same way, right? Like I can't think of anything more perfect. And the way, though, that you frame that final moment where like the camera pulls back, and after being like so intimate with Larson, instead we're way away in the perspective of a bystander, and there's this kind of like real sense of like sudden distance and shock and darkness to the way you handle that. That's immediately undercut, and I think brilliantly undercut by the cowabunga, right? Like it's like the camera pulls back and prepares you for this moment of real tragedy, and and then you get the punchline of the cowabunga. And
Yeah, the cowabunga is sort of, he like you said, it's an accidental suicide in a way, because, had he succeeded, he'd be bragging at the bottom to all of his friends about having gone through the barrel and all of that. So it's kind of a win-win for him, I guess.
right. And I love like the way these poems fit together too. And I only just realized this now with you rereading them, as opposed to like when I read them when you submitted them. But like the first 2 poems contain like multiple real like close calls with death, and like insinuations. On the one hand, like insinuations that Larson is like growing increasingly suicidal, right? But even above and beyond that, like Larson's life has consisted of all of these moments where like literally in any Larson poem, he could die. And the way these 2 like rather normal seeming Larson poems come into play, and there's just this extra hint of darkness to them compared to the other ones, and just this extra little bit of insidiousness to them that you don't really grasp at first because you're so used to his like kind of picaresque way of like getting himself into really ugly, nasty situations and surviving, that you can kind of feel it growing, like the dread growing without realizing. And then like it clicks that, oh no, wait, this might be different. I don't know. I just love the buildup there.
Well, thanks a lot, and thanks for letting me read, and thanks for all of
Yeah.
your commentary.
As usual, Adam, thank you for reading. It's awesome. And I think last up for tonight, last up for tonight is Carter, unless someone, Rudy, did anyone else say in the chat that they wanted to read? I don't think so.
Nope. Carter was the last one. I think they just mentioned it.
Okay, Carter, you're last up tonight. Oh, Keith,
Oh,
has-
actually, Keith-
you're second
Keith-
to last tonight, Carter.
Oh. So I'm going now? Or after
Yeah, you're
Keith?
going now. Sorry, yeah.
Right on. Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm gonna read my story that came out on this it's, I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called Misery Tourism a few days ago. And I guess it'll be the last thing I published on Misery Tourism.
I've never heard of this publication. It seems pretty marginal to me. It's probably one of those ones that's just some losers made, like probably two dudes in their basement made a WordPress blog or something. Probably like 5 people read it, but it's good that you're getting published somewhere, Carter.
Cool. So this story is called Sitting on the Couch Watching Internet. And let me see if there's a good oh, maybe this one. Yes, this is good. I wanted to find a topical filter for this story. All right. Sitting on the couch watching internet. Okay, now you pick, she said, leaning into his chest. And even though the eels came out of his hands when they touched, she thought it was nice to feel so close to someone. The video he picked was a concert of John Zorn and Yamatsuka Aya. The band played a series of very short, spastic, tightly composed jazz pieces, while Yamatsuka screamed like a dolphin being tortured. The video quality seemed degraded despite a high production value, like the recording had been sitting too long on YouTube and was starting to decay. She wasn't sure whether or not that was a thing that actually happened. She nuzzled close into his body, drawing in some of his warmth. This was date number 3. His heart was beating fast, maybe from the music or the alcohol. Maybe all boys' hearts got to that speed on the 3rd date. The eels moved slowly, worming out from under his fingernails. Sometimes they retracted themselves after poking around her arms and neck curiously for a bit. She imagined them moving under his skin and thought they could be moving under her skin just as easily. We don't have to watch the whole thing, he said. You get the idea. Somewhere in the video, John Zorn started to grunt like a walrus. The words were indecipherable. Then he blew his saxophone so loud it distorted her laptop speakers. No, I really like this kind of music, she said. I like how fast it is. I've always loved Yamatsuka Aya, said the boy. He's a legend in the noise community. The way he uses his voice is just something else. He wrapped an eel around the beer on the table and chugged what was left, then set down the empty bottle and slid around her shoulder. The eels moved under her shirt and around her waist, their skin gray, black, and coated in a thin, silvery mucus. And she felt them touching her more purposefully now, caressing, massaging, and she felt an odd sense of comfort in their movements, like she always knew where they were going next. What's it feel like when they come out? He gave her an odd smile and said, huh? She thought for a moment and said, never mind. She wondered if somehow he didn't know the eels were there, or maybe it was just a stupid thing to ask. The next video was of 2 female singers moving through a white, featureless space. The artist's slow and methodical movements reminded her of a video she once saw of a sea crate, its body moving in a way that looked like it had no bones, the spine bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. Meanwhile, the boy's hands were moving over her arms and shoulders, unhurriedly, enticingly. He wrapped his arms around her so that her whole body was against his. She let him hold her close. She wanted his breath to warm her neck. She wanted to be close enough to him that she could trace every movement from the inside of his skin to hers. She rested her head on his shoulder and the eels writhed against her neck a little faster now, like they were growing more excited to be feeling her. Were they touching her because she wanted them to? Did they have minds of their own? It didn't matter. Eventually, as the duet video descended into a final brooding chorus, one of them started to burrow around her clavicle. She could feel its soft, squirming form work its way under her skin. She had always thought the human body was simply a shell, but now it felt like something mystical, like her body was the center of a hidden cosmology that only these eels knew how to divine. The feeling of being bored into was so pleasurable it was almost painful, and she cried out suddenly. The boy jolted away and eyed her. Her whole body was tingling. The eels retreated under his nails. Are you okay? Yeah, of course, she said. Her head was spinning and it took a while to recover her bearings. She drank some of her beer and reached for the laptop. My turn again. She picked a video at random. Oh God, this is a kind of a left turn. Shut up, she replied, and buried herself back in his arms. The music was by some pop rock band called Yoniga and had a lot of catchy harmonized hooks. The video itself was just a fan-made montage of anime clips set very loosely to the music. It was goofy, but she didn't mind as the eels moved back under her shirt and began to stroke her. She was breathing hard, and she could feel the boy's attention on her, though he seemed apathetic about the eels themselves as they crossed and canvassed her body. There was something so attractive in the way he could act so detached, but still be so close to her, so very much a part of her in this moment they sculpted together. As the song went on, his attention turned to the screen, but the eels only focused harder on her. Something was happening. She felt them move up under her chin and towards her lips. Her body quivered as she felt them begin to work their way inside her. It was like her whole body wanted to be taken, to break open, to invite them in. As she watched the video stream on, as she felt the eels move through her esophagus and into her stomach, she moaned and moaned into the boy's neck. She could feel the eel slide through her stomach, entering her body cavity, worming into her innards. She could hear them now, hear them moving inside her body, feel the strange sensation of their flesh, their slick bodies rubbing against her intestines. They felt warm, each one of them, like dense cords of comfort as they slithered inside her. Eventually, the feeling rose to such an intensity that she could no longer hear the music, couldn't open her eyes wide enough to see the screen or the boy or the bottles or anything else. It wasn't quite like an orgasm. It wasn't even particularly sexual, but still her entire body was raptured away from the world and doused from the inside out in pure, unflinching pleasure. She felt like her soul had been opened up, her heart magnified, her lungs turned into balloons. She was all feeling, all sensation, and nothing else. The motion of eels inside her body, that warm, wonderful passion had overtaken her. And she didn't care if they made her sick, or if they made her fat, or if she suffocated. She just wanted to curl up with them, be taken and filled by them, and exist like this until the end of the universe. When she opened her eyes, it was dark, a few minutes or a few hours later. The boy was asleep, slumped over the far end of the couch. Moonlight seeped in through the living room window, and the laptop was closed. She was covered in a cold sheen of sweat. The eels were nowhere to be found. The feeling of them was utterly gone. Without thinking, she leapt across the couch and grabbed the boy's hand. She pried his fingers open and held them close to her face, staring into his nails, kissing at his fingertips, hunting desperately for any sight or smell or taste of the eels, but they were just hands now. He woke up and asked her what the hell she was doing. Where are they? Her voice was hoarse, her throat still heavy with a layer of warm slime. Where did they go? What are you talking about? He pulled his hand away and wiped his eyes. I think I should go home. No, she said, don't leave. He stood up. She was still staring at his hands, his regular skinny flesh hands that ended in regular skinny flesh fingers. Please stay. Look, I had fun and stuff, but yeah, this is like, I should go. And then he was gone. She started to feel like she was going to vomit. She put her head between her legs and took deep breaths, trying to calm her stomach, but it was no use. She could feel the absence of eels inside her, like a cold vacuum in her gut, filling her with emptiness. She got up and went to the kitchen and looked at her knives. Maybe if she cut herself open, she could excise the void they left behind. Probably not worth a try. Probably it was just the kind of thing you have to wait around for. Let it burn itself out. Later, she opened her laptop to a video called 11 hours of 4K underwater wonders plus relaxing music, coral reefs, and colorful sea life in Ultra HD. It looped a shot of a small crevasse in a pile of brain coral where a pair of huge green morays were hiding, mouths wavering open as they gazed into the camera. She sat and watched it and finished a warm beer, wondering what it meant to feel close to someone else and why she needed that feeling so bad in the first place. That's it.
So Carter, I talked about this earlier, but in the most recent couple of batches of Misery Tourism submissions, Rudy and I have separated the submissions out from minute one. So he gets a batch that he reads, and I get a batch that I read. And we've been handling acceptance separately and publishing separately. So this is actually my first time reading this piece.
Oh, nice.
And it's fucking awesome. It feels kind of like a companion to the Mummy piece that we published earlier, in that you have this really remarkable skill at taking taking very magical worlds and injecting them with this sense of banal and mundane real life, or of taking banal mundane real life and injecting them with just enough magic, right? It's not really magical realism exactly, because it's tonally very different, I think, from magical realism.
I don't know if I'm allowed to call anything I write magical realism, but that's another conversation.
But I really enjoy in this piece, I love the lingering mystery of whether these eels exist at all, right? It's whether they're whether they're an actual physical thing, or whether they're simply she's experiencing some kind of profound psychological break while she's with this guy, right? But regardless of that, regardless of what the reality of the situation here, this piece has a lot to say about tenderness and intimacy, and the connections that people perceive as existing between each other when they don't, so much of this piece, her perception of the power he has, and his obviously just complete and profound disinterest in her, and the disconnect there, and the way you communicate that through the eels, as opposed to there's so many there are so many ways pieces of writing usually try to communicate that kind of a divide with dialogue, or with just straight up depicting people's psychological states. But this is really awesome, because it gets at that without ever tipping over to being pure symbolism, right? Or being pure metaphor. And I think anyway, I'm rambling. It's a really good fucking piece. And even though I never read it before, I'm very glad we decided to publish it.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the kind words and the thoughtful takeaways. I'm not really sure where I think the metaphor begins or ends in this one. I just kind of wrote it, but it gives me some cool stuff to think about, which I like. So yeah, thanks so much for publishing it, and for all the support you've given me and all of us. It's a shame to see the hiatus on the horizon, but yeah, you guys are awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Carter. Thank you, Carter. And it's an awesome piece. And I'm really glad we got to feature you in Misery Tourism 3 times or 4 times, multiple times.
I think 3 solos and 1 co-authored piece.
That's what it was. That's what it was. All right. Thank you so much, Carter.
Yeah, thanks.
And Keith is last up tonight.
Okay. Thank you, William. So I'm going to begin by reading a brief introduction. This is a short story that was inspired by recent events. Although I wrote it with an individual in mind that's here tonight, it's a story for everyone. Thanks everybody for listening. Lunch with a hummingbird. He sits at the kitchen table, eating his lunch, watching the hummingbird at the feeder outside the window, only a few feet away. It's the same kitchen table that he sat at as a young boy many years ago. The chairs are the same too. When he was young, the table was in his grandmother and grandfather's kitchen nook. Usually, his mother and sister joined him and his grandparents at the table. His grandfather always sat at the head of the table, opposite the end that he sat at. They were the men of the house. His grandfather could look over his head and out of the window behind him and see the flowers in the garden. His grandfather could watch the redbirds bathe in the bird bath. He could see his grandfather's smile, bright and cheerful. And behind his grandfather's balding head, he could see the door to the hallway that he and his grandfather would walk down together after the evening meal, the hallway that led to the den, where he would watch his grandfather smoke a cigarette, and he would sit on the couch, patiently waiting, with both feet on the floor. And then his mother, grandmother, and sister would join them, and his grandfather would turn the television set on. If it was a weekday, Walter Cronkite. If it was a Saturday, the Lawrence Welk Show. If it was a Sunday, he and his mother and sister would not be there in the evening, because after church and just after 1 o'clock, they would have all had Sunday dinner together with his grandmother and grandfather, a dinner that his great-grandmother would join in with them, and afterwards they would go home. Over the years, the kitchen table passed through the family in proper succession. If all goes well, his oldest son will one day sit at the head of the table with his wife and son to his side. And on special occasions, his oldest son's brother will be present, sitting at the opposite end. Thoughts of those times have not even entered their heads yet. He knows that, and that's a good thing for now, he believes. Occasionally, he pines for those days of the past, usually when everyone's looking through the boxes and albums of family pictures on holidays and special family gatherings. And sometimes it's when he's sitting at the kitchen table, alone, eating, watching the hummingbird, writing thoughts in his head. He always wants to remember where he came from and those he loved and loved him back. They helped make him who he is today. He owes so many, so much. While he eats his lunch and watches the hummingbird, he listens to beautiful music. It's a piece of music that he listened to during some of the most stressful times of his life, though he's not stressed today. The voice, the melody, the lyrics are all so soothing. Her voice is therapeutic. He hopes that everyone has music that speaks to them for all of the occasions of life, not just the stressful times. He listens to the lyrics of the song. It's a beautiful poem. It's timeless, and the singer's voice makes it so. As he finishes eating, he watches as the hummingbird continues to feed. For over a dozen years, the hummingbird has graced his window above the kitchen table. Every fall in October, it leaves. And then in March, it comes back home. The farewell is a time of sadness, and the anxiousness of its return begins in February. The hummingbird has never let him down. Time moves on, and with it, life. He can still see the smiles on the faces around the kitchen table, the same kitchen table that he sat at as a young boy. His mind shifts gears. He wants to write a story. He needs to write a story, but not a story like some of the ones he's been writing lately. He needs to move on. He needs to accept some things. It's what they would want. It's what one day he would want. He wants to write a story about love, about family, about life. He wants to make people smile. He wants to help people experience the beauty of life. Maybe he has already written that story. He just doesn't realize it. Thank you.
Keith, that was beautiful as usual. This piece is just, I don't know, it's so gentle and so life affirming. And we've been through I know I've been through a pretty dark time these past few months. And it's nice sometimes to have a piece that's just fucking life affirming, but not life affirming in a bullshit way. You know, there are some pieces that exist where you could tell, like, that have these feel good narratives that are contrived, where you feel like it's a used car salesman trying to sell you on feeling good about yourself, right? And this is not that at all. This is the polar fucking opposite of that, because it arrives at a sense of like gentleness and good feeling naturally by just watching someone's thought processes evolve, like you watching the hummingbird, right? Like, you allow the reader to just kind of gently inhabit this consciousness, and through doing that to become kind of immersed in this sense of good feeling and in this sense of like gentle hope. And it's a good fucking piece. It's a good fucking piece is what I'm saying, Keith.
Thanks, William. Thank you.
And thank
Yeah,
you so
Keith.
much for sharing that. I think it's every once in a while, I'm so glad that you come and read at these things, not just because you're a really talented writer, and not just because like you you prevent me from feeling like I'm the oldest person in the room sometimes, but also because because of the work that we publish, there's often this kind of pervasive sense of like darkness or cynicism. And we need an antidote to that. We need a counterbalance to that, and you always provide it. So thank you, Keith.
Well,
Keith, like William was saying, this is really like you said, it's heartfelt and not, and like, you know, without the bullshit. Basically, it feels like he painted almost like with a Studio Ghibli type of brush. It's just good feels and good vibes, but behind that there's also, you know, Miyazaki, you know, himself, and that stops it from being like so bullshitty. So it's really good. I love how like good the feels are, but also how real and true they are, you know.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks so
it.
much, Keith. And I
Thanks.
think, Rudy, has anyone in the chat said they want to read? No?
I don't see anybody else.
Okay, I think we're done. I think we're going to wrap up there, but of course, I'm going to leave the Zoom meeting open for God knows how long, so people can chat and hang out and stuff. But I'm going to end the recording now. So if you're watching this on YouTube, this has been Misery Loves Company. We do this every fucking week, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Anyone is welcome to come and share their work. Anyone is welcome to come and just lurk, just hang out, comment on other people's work, just fucking soak in the atmosphere or whatever. We tweet out the link right before we start from our Twitter account at Misery Tourism. I really hate saying we tweet from our Twitter account. I've been saying that for 2 years, and every time I say it, some little part of me like twists up and dies, and I need to figure out a way. I need to find a new verb or a new noun so I can say that sentence differently. Anyway, that's it. Fuck it. We're done. We're done. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's read. Thank you to everyone who comes to these. Okay, we're done.